Hello friends, my name is Marines and I give negative reviews. For me personally, this all started back when we started the Snark Squad. We started that project actually recapping books, and the idea was that we would recap books that we loved as children and kind of look at them now with a more critical eye, but also with humor, to say this is a thing that you liked when you were a kid and look at it now that you can see things like plot holes and racist remarks and very problematic messaging to tweens and children. And it came from a place of two places. One was of entertainment, that we could make people laugh by letting them revisit these things that they read as children, and two, because we loved these books. The reason that we started the project was like we enjoyed these things. There was a moment where we were fans of these works. So from that place where we can say things like, oh, I thought I was, Claudia from the Babysitters Club and she was my favorite, where we have those kinds of memories of being fans of the work, we could come now and criticize it, but still recognizing and realizing that there was a time when we absolutely loved this material. We of course expanded the blog and we started recapping TV shows. The first one was Buffy, and I think it's important to mention that because the site as a whole has taught me a lot about being a critical consumer, but Buffy in particular was really what fine-tuned those skills. Buffy played such a major role in that because there were characters that did really awful things in that series that people gave passes to because of later developments, because they loved the character, but it took us really saying, okay guys, stop and look at what's happening right now, and can we agree that this right now is not good? Regardless of what the character does later, I think it's important to take those things, those messages in media that you're currently consuming, and be able to say, okay, this is problematic. I may love the piece as a whole, I may love the series, I may love this book, but it's important to say these are problematic aspects within this series or book. We never set out to be the blog that calls these things out necessarily, and I don't think that's still our mission. I think we still are coming from a place of entertainment and love of pop culture. Like, those are still our two driving forces, but we certainly grew, and identifying problematic aspects in media where we can find them certainly has become one of the things that we do. I don't think it's my duty to pick negative things in whatever I consume, but to avoid negative reviews, I feel like there's a bit of shaming that is attached to critical consumption. To me personally, it isn't only that negative reviews are important, but that honest reviews are. As long as I can communicate my opinions in a way that is accessible to others, I don't see why I shouldn't be honest with the way that I feel towards media. That said, I have 7 points about negative book reviews because this is a BookTube video that I just kind of want to address. Number 1, identifying things in books that we don't like helps us understand things that we do like. If you finish a book and you take the time to think, okay, this wasn't my favorite, what didn't I like about this? And you identify something like bad world building or a superficial character, then in the future, when you are looking for books that you do want, you can think, well, I like strong world building and characters I can relate to. And that is a path to finding things that you can absolutely love. Number 2, people tend to harp on negative reviews for the love of books. I just love books so much that I don't want to say anything bad about books ever. Why should we discourage people from reading? Why should we discourage people from buying books? I feel like by not holding a standard, you're essentially inviting writers to phone it in, because we don't speak up enough about the negative things, the things that we don't want to see in books. If there is enough of a voice saying this is not what we want to see, and someone will say, well, don't buy the book. Well, that's the way that book sales work, is that we get a back of the book blurb and we can say this sounds good and give our money to that author, that publishing house, but we don't know what's in the book until you get to the end. So the only way to let people know that this is not what we want to see in books and other stories is to talk about it, is to review, is to be able to say this was not a good thing. Number 3, negative is not unkind. Negative can be unkind. There are certainly people who are unkind toward authors without realizing that you can be negative or critical of a work without being mean to an author. That was another lesson that I felt we had to learn, because there were times where I feel like I would make a joke about E.L. James because her book was so bad. So I have apologized about that in the past, but it was a lesson learned, because truly what you're looking at is the work and not a person. I never want to attack another person, because why? Number 4, these are my opinions. To say that my not liking a thing is going to discourage people from reading or not make them, buy a book, I think it's just, I've read negative reviews that made me want to buy the book anyway. So if we keep that in mind as reviewers, we don't sell what we're saying as, law, and we keep that in mind as consumers of reviews, that this person's opinion is not mine, and they've liked things that I've hated, and they've hated things that I've liked. So you take everything with a grain of salt, and you listen for things. For instance, if I say something was very direct writing, like I said in my last video about The Heart Does Not Grow Back, that had less flowery writing, and that's why I didn't like it as much. Well, friend, if you don't like flowery writing, this does not apply to you. Again, to blanket statement that critical or negative reviews are bad in some way is to forget that they are just opinions and they can be useful. Either way, I'm talking about your book, I'm spreading it to other people, and there are definitely people, like I said, who will hear a negative review and still be curious and still want to experience the thing for themselves, which has happened to me a lot. When you write a book, when you publish a book, there has to be an understanding that you are inviting people to look at your work and to criticize it, at least in some manner. Number 6, I'm a consumer. I paid money for these things. I find it so great that when it comes to the book community, we're like, don't talk bad about it. But at a restaurant, you can sit down and say, well, that wasn't good, without fearing for the chef in the back who has children and a family and who this is his life's work. Well, I understand that, but I'm still a consumer. I'm allowed to have opinions about the things that I am investing money and time into. I mean, nobody's paying me the big bucks to make these videos. No one's paying me the any bucks to make these videos. And finally, this is fun for me. I enjoy being a critical consumer. I love to look at things and find patterns. I love to look at things and think about and decide and communicate what I liked and didn't like. I love to be able to put forth my opinion and have people say, yeah, you noticed that thing, me too. Or else say, I completely disagree with you, look at it from this angle, or this is the way that I feel. And whether or not that person sways me or convinces me over to their way of thinking, at least we both can say, oh, I get your point. That is so much fun for me. That is why I write and blog and BookTube. I'm not saying to anyone that they need to write negative reviews or critical reviews or anything like that, but I just think that there should be a level of understanding and that the shaming should kind of go away. This is what I do, and these are the conversations that I want to start, and I think they're just as important as gushing or fangirling or whatever else is at the other end of the spectrum, which I do that stuff too. So there you have it. That's why I am a critical consumer, and then I don't find anything wrong at all with being able to talk about the books that we like and the books that we don't like. With all media, and this is one of my biggest pet peeves, is when people generalize and they say things like, I don't watch TV. Well, there's good and there's bad TV, there's good and bad music, there are good and bad movies, and it follows that in that same vein, there are good and bad books. Thank you so much for watching and for tuning in, and I will see you next time. Hooray!